They called him the Scourge of God, a name whispered in terror across the dying Roman world. Attila the Hun was more than a man. He was a force of nature from the endless plains of the East. His reputation was built on destruction. Cities burned, fields trampled, populations scattered. Romans saw him as divine punishment, a whip sent by God to chastise a sinful empire. Fear became his greatest weapon, spreading faster than his armies. Attila was the storm on the horizon, commanding the nomadic tide straight at Rome's heart. His name became a weapon, striking terror before his armies even arrived. The Roman legion was built for set-piece battles, heavy infantry, armoured, shielded, moving as a wall of steel. But the Huns fought differently. They were a cavalry army, light, fast, and born in the saddle. Hunnic warriors mastered the composite bow, firing with deadly accuracy at full gallop. They swarmed enemies with arrows, refusing close combat unless it favoured them. The Romans, slow and reliant on supply trains, struggled to counter this ghostly mobile force. The Huns used feigned retreats and the wilderness as their ally, luring legions into exhausting chases. They lived off the land, herding cattle and foraging, needing no slow supply wagons. Their mobility made them nearly impossible to catch or corner. Roman armies, tied to roads and logistics, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. The Huns' self-sufficiency and speed turned the battlefield into their domain. For Rome, it was a nightmare. How do you fight an enemy who refuses to stand still? The Huns' way of war was as relentless as it was alien. They were a self-sufficient force, perfectly adapted to a life of constant movement and warfare. Attila inherited the Hunnic throne in 434 AD alongside his brother Bleda. Rome tried to buy peace with gold, paying tribute to keep the Huns at bay. For Attila, this was a sign of Roman weakness, a lesson he would exploit. He doubled the tribute, demanded refugees returned, and forced a free trade zone along the Danube. When Bleda died, possibly at Attila's hand, Attila became sole ruler, uniting Huns and subject tribes under his command. He transformed the Huns from raiders into a centralized empire, his court a magnet for warriors across the steppes. His strategy was brutal: make demands, invade if refused, then demand even more. In 447 AD, he invaded the Balkans, destroying over 70 cities and nearly reaching Constantinople. The Eastern Roman army was crushed. The emperor was forced to triple the tribute. Attila showed that gold could not buy safety. It only made him stronger. He bled Rome dry, using diplomacy and terror as weapons. Each victory fed his ambition and the Huns' hunger for more. Rome's attempts at appeasement only fueled Attila's rise. The Huns became not just a threat, but a force reshaping the empire itself. By 450 AD, Attila turned west, seeking a pretext to invade the Western Roman Empire. When Honoria, the emperor's sister, sent him a plea for rescue, Attila claimed her and half the empire as his due. Rejected, he declared war, assembling a vast coalition of Huns, Goths, and others. Crossing the Rhine, his army swept into Gaul with terrifying speed, razing cities like Metz and spreading panic. The Huns lived off the land, stripping countrysides bare and feeding their army while starving their enemies. Their advance was a psychological weapon. Towns surrendered at the mere rumour of their approach. The Huns had no cities to defend, no single point of weakness. They were everywhere and nowhere, a river of steel flooding the land. Roman citizens fled in terror, their world collapsing before the oncoming horde. Attila's strategy broke resistance before battles even began. His campaign was as much about conquering minds as territory. The fear he inspired was as devastating as his armies. Attila's legend grew with every city that fell or surrendered. Attila wielded fear as his sharpest weapon, cultivating a terrifying image. The Huns' ritual scars, strange customs, and ruthless efficiency fed rumors of demonic origins. Attila encouraged these legends, using them to break enemy morale before battle. Stories of his cruelty, real and exaggerated, spread ahead of his armies, paralyzing cities with dread. Surrender seemed safer than resistance. Panic and division weakened defenses from within. Attila's title, the Scourge of God, made him seem an instrument of divine wrath. In a religious age, this created fatalism and helplessness among his foes. His blend of intimidation, rumor, and religious manipulation made his army seem unstoppable. After the bloody battle of the Catalonian plains, Attila turned to Italy in 452 AD. He destroyed Aquileia, Milan, and Pavia, leaving Rome itself vulnerable. As panic gripped the city, Pope Leo III led an embassy to meet Attila. Legend claims divine intervention, but reality was harsher. Attila's army was ravaged by disease and famine. The Italian climate and lack of supplies crippled his forces. Eastern Roman troops threatened his rear, and his men were dying. Attila, pragmatic as ever, accepted tribute and withdrew. It was not Roman arms, but logistics and disease that saved Rome. Attila left Italy with gold, his army weakened but undefeated. The encounter with Pope Leo became legend, but the true enemy was nature itself. Attila's retreat marked the beginning of the end for his empire. Attila returned to his palace, his empire at its zenith. In 453 AD, he married Ildiko and celebrated with a great feast. The next morning, Attila was found dead, choked by a nosebleed in his sleep. Rumors of murder or assassination swirled, but most agree it was natural causes. His warriors mourned with blood, not tears. Attila's death shattered his empire. His sons fought and subject tribes rebelled. Within a year, the Hunnic army was destroyed at the Battle of Nedao. The empire collapsed as quickly as it had risen. The Huns scattered, vanishing into the steppes. Attila's power had been personal, not institutional. Without him, the empire could not hold. The terror he inspired died with him. The world he had shaken returned to uneasy calm. Attila's story is more than ancient conquest. It's a lesson in survival and adaptation. The Huns thrived on the harsh Eurasian steppe, mastering mobility and self-sufficiency. Their culture was built for movement, resilience, and resourcefulness. On the battlefield, their speed and unpredictability outmatched Rome's rigid might. The Huns treated Europe as their backyard, using its wilds as highways for lightning raids. They traveled light, lived off the land, and managed resources with expert efficiency. Their adaptability was their greatest weapon, changing tactics, breaking rules, and keeping enemies off balance. Rome's strength was its tradition. The Huns was their ability to adapt. Victory often goes to those who move fastest and think differently. The Huns showed that speed and adaptability could bring even the world's mightiest empire to its knees. Their legacy is a reminder. In survival, as in war, it's not always the strongest who win, but the most adaptable. Attila's shadow lingers, a symbol of how the wild can shake the foundations of civilization. The world would never forget the Scourge of God.